Welcome to another episode of Casual Cinephilia, where enthusiastic amateurs talk very passionately about movies. I'm Ian.
I'm Lorien, and happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Today we're talking about the first horror movies we ever saw as children.
And I feel that though the two movies we watched are so absolutely different, they are both classics for very different reasons.
Very different reasons.
Like, yours was a classic because it was a classic. Mine was a classic because it very much so became a cult classic.
Yes.
So, the two movies we are talking about are Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Evil Dead. So, I think we should start with the proper classic, Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was your pick.
Yes, thank God. I saw Creature from the Black Lagoon when I was probably 8 or 9. One of my friends was having a sleepover birthday party that was classic monster movie themed. And that party introduced me to this movie. I think we watched Frankenstein. We watched a few of the Abbott and Costello Meat movies. That was a very formative party, I guess.
Yeah.
Looking back on it.
Those are like some of the best old school horror and comedies of all time.
Yeah.
You were like 8. That's such a weird set of movies to watch as an 8 or 9-year-old, especially at a sleepover
she was
party.
Like turning 10, and that was what she wanted.
I mean,
so
I wish I had friends like that when I was young. I had friends that made me watch Evil Dead.
Right. No wonder I'm so much more mentally healthy than you.
It's so apparent now. Oh man. I have realized while I was watching Creature from the Black Lagoon, I've never actually watched it all the way through. This was the first time I had actually watched it all the way through. Like, I've watched Boris Karloff's, The Mummy, and I watched Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Monster. Like, I've watched all of them, like even The Invisible Man, the more offshoot ones. But I never watched Creature from the Black Lagoon.
It's great.
It is so good. Like, I don't know, there's something about it that it allows you to be a part of the adventure, whereas like with Frankenstein and the Wolfman, it's hard to relate. But essentially, this is a bunch of explorers essentially being hunted by an evolved crocodile, essentially.
Right.
And the terror is so much more relatable in it.
Right.
And it was just, I don't know, I really enjoyed every second of this movie. Like, it's not a long movie either.
No, it's like an hour and a half, maybe less than that.
Yeah, I think it's like an hour and 15, hour and 20. It's not long at all.
And also the setting and story are much more simple than a lot of the other Universal monster movies, which suits both its, the technological constraints of the era and its story. Because there's not a lot of, the story is they're trying to find an evolution stepping point for a fish, and then this creature starts attacking them.
Yeah.
And then they want to go. That's more or less the story. That fills an hour 15 perfectly.
It really does. And like, there's not even an epilogue. Like, it just ends.
Yep.
I guess we should say spoilers for a movie that came out 116 years ago. So, not 100, 56 years ago. 56 years ago. 66. Math. It came out in 1954. You do the math.
Say, Ian.
Oh my God. 100. Where did the 100
Are you
come from?
calling me from the future?
Yes.
You're really behind your schedule.
Oh my God. Math is hard on
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
But that being said, the thing that stuck out the most to me, especially knowing how old this movie is, the underwater cinematography in this is amazing. Like, it's so impressive. Like, there's scenes where these actors who are just they're not even in scuba suits. They're in what's called an aqualung, which was a primitive version of a scuba suit. So it wasn't a regulated pressure of air. It was literally like you could just turn on a valve and you had air flowing into your mouth. Like, it was pretty intense. There was no respirator or anything that allowed you to stop the flow of it. So aqualungs were literally just a constant pressure of air going into your mouth that you had to breathe. And these guys are swimming through downed trees underwater. They're fighting each other. They're ripping they're ripping the aqualungs out of each other's mouth. Like, that probably was one of the most intense, probably would have been one of the most intense filming scenes I've seen in a long time. Because one guy's in a monster suit, and the other guy's just got an aqualung, and they are literally duking it out 5 to 10 feet underwater. And that's insane to me.
I made a dress themed around the Gilman character, and I posted it today on my YouTube and on Facebook and a few historical costuming groups I'm a part of, because they open it up to Halloween. And I got a message from this guy asking if I was a fan of the movie. I was like, yes. He was like, I'm going to PM you something. He had a behind-the-scenes conversation on tape of, I think it was like a panel he was at, of one of the guys who played the Gilman. Because there were two. Two men played the Gilman. One played the above water on solid ground Gilman, and another guy did all the swimming.
That's crazy.
And he sent me this interview with Rico Browning, the guy who did all the swimming, about filming those scenes, where he's talking about the water, because they filmed a lot of the swimming stuff in Florida. So the water was warm, like in the 70s, he's saying, but when you got out of the water, it was like in the 40s at that point a year.
Oh God.
So they'd rehearse their stuff. They'd go try and get their shots. If they got it, great. If they didn't, they'd have to go back up, rehearse above water, go back under, try and film it, just over and over again if they had to. Apparently the underwater choreographer couldn't swim, so he'd just be out there in an inner tube with a mask. So that makes the fighting scenes even more impressive.
Jeez.
The guy who choreographed them couldn't have done them, to give example. And then they, just have to sit out on the barge in the cold. And the costume was a little bit of a trick to get on and off. You could remove the hands and the mask, but the body, would stay on. So apparently he was sitting up there shivering, and the crew started to take pity on him. And they started going over individually and offering him brandy, without knowing that the other crew had been offering him brandy as well. So the guy who has to swim in an invasive monster suit started to get wasted on brandy. And apparently they had to scrap like a day of filming because he was just drunk.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I love that kind of stuff.
What fun. Thanks,
right?
Internet.
So I'm looking at the IMDb. So it's Rico Browning was the Gilman in the water, and then Ben Chapman was the Gilman on land. And neither of them were credited. Yeah. How crazy is that?
It's crazy. I mean, I feel like nowadays that would be insane. Although, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, like The Mandalorian, to pull from something on my mind, is played by 3 dudes, and they've been very careful about crediting that. But there are so many more characters that are played by so many people that are, masked or in prosthetics, and you don't get credit for anyone but the voice actor. So it's not an incredibly unheard of thing.
Yeah, but it kind of gives you respect for people like Doug Jones, who are well-known creatures, like, I don't know, just the fact that Doug Jones was able to break past that unknown masked actor and is able to be known, so it's interesting.
That's why Doug Jones is the best. Also, speaking of Doug Jones, and his recent run as a Gilman-esque creature, Ian, I'm going to ask you something awkward.
Okay.
When you were watching Creature of the Black Lagoon, at any point, did you say, you know what? I want to fuck that creature?
No. I don't.
Because apparently that's what Guillermo del Toro was thinking. If you watch Shape of Water, which he has said is inspired by this movie, there's no other explanation than him watching this movie and being like, yeah, that thing's sexy.
It's like, I'd tap that.
Right. Is, when you watch the movie, it's not a sexy creature.
No.
It's trying to murder people, and it's swimming around and hissing a lot. It actually
does, in fact, have very grotesquely, I feel, an anatomically correct, like, finnage, and, like, I don't know if finnage is a word, but, like, it's, like, it has dorsal fins, and, like, no, that, oh god, no.
So next time you're watching Shape of Water and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
I saw Shape of Water once, and, that was enough for me.
Yeah. Same.
I can only take so many fish sticks.
Yeah.
Sorry, fish sticks.
Is that an official quote? Ian can only take so many fish sticks.
Oh, I'm so glad we don't have a merch line.
That would be the best t-shirt. No one would buy it, because who wants to wear a shirt that says I can only take so many fish sticks? It's terrible.
You know who would buy it? Guillermo del Toro.
Yep. Although, is that factually accurate for Guillermo del Toro?
So I'm going to change the subject.
Good call.
Watching Creature from the Black Lagoon, I didn't realize how much I related to the creature from the Black Lagoon. Other than murdering 3 ethnic dudes and injuring 1 white dude. Because that's what he does. He doesn't kill any of the white guys.
Of course.
Which, by the way, totally other off-topic subject. This movie's hella sexist.
It's hella sexist. It's hella racist.
Yeah.
But it's also a movie from the mid-50s.
This is true. Fair enough.
It's pretty par for the course.
A part of its time.
So, the woman was a scientist.
This is true.
So
and they do
a baby step in there.
They do make it very clear that the main guy, what was it, David, is only as successful as he is because of how smart she is.
Sure.
So they do make that point.
So even though she is submissive and wilting the rest of the time, she's apparently a badass science chick who gets her way. But just not in the parts that we see.
Yes. Especially the part where it's like, you need to go under to be safe. No, she won't be safe. Stay with us. Like they're arguing on how best to protect her. It's just like she's like,
doing the like grab the sides of my face thing.
Yes,
it's very 50s.
Very 50s. But what I was going to say is, I relate so much to the monster. Other than the murder, I have not murdered anyone. You can't prove it.
Okay.
But there's moments where he's just so socially awkward. And like the
Like where he's reaching out for her ankle and goes, yeah, better not.
yeah. Or like the first introduction to the character. So like you see the character 3 or 4 times, but you only see the monster from behind or a profiled like shadow and a murdering people behind like a tent, and you just see the motion of it. The first moment you actually see the face of it is the 2 divers swimming over his hole, and he just whiffs the attempt. Just like, oh, and he like reaches for him, but they've already passed over him by like 10 feet, and he's like, oh shit, and he like swims back into his hole. It's like, I've been there, man.
Basically, from the creature's perspective, this entire movie is get off my lawn!
It really is.
And then people poison his lawn to kill all of the creatures on it.
Yeah, what was that
and they
part?
try and take him out of his house, and he just wants them to get off his lawn.
Yeah, oh my god, it was so funny.
The guy with the offensively indistinguishable somewhere European accent. No, not European. South American accent.
Completely indistinguishable.
Clearly a white man playing a South American character, and the accent is a mix of every fantasy South American accent you could possibly have thought of in the 50s.
Oh, for sure.
And his best idea is just like, you know what? Let's roofie all of the lagoon and see what happens.
Oh, man. The 50s were a weird time. Man. Oh, and he finally kidnaps the girl.
Yes.
So he flat out murders the guys. So was he like taking her as like a mate?
Who knows?
So maybe that's where
we can only be grateful that we don't know.
So this was just a predecessor to Guillermo del Toro's fanfic. Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
What would have happened?
He finished the story in some crusty old journals when he was 13, I'm sure.
Oh, God. Sticky paged journal. Ugh. Oh, man. This is a good movie,
the movie is, we just find her completely unharmed in the middle of a cave.
Oh, yeah. Laying on a, a formed out rock that she can lounge on, in their lagoon. Yeah. I do think it's really funny. There's a line in the movie where the 2 guys when they first get to like the place before the Black Lagoon, and they're just swimming under, and it's obviously either in like a beach or a water stage. Like just it's pretty barren. Like it's not a real place. And there's like 2 fish. And it's just white with them and like random sticks coming out of the sand, and it's just grotesque and kind of barren. And they get to the top, and the girl's just like, oh, I wish I could dive with you. What's it like down there? And the guy just goes, it's like a whole other world. It's like, okay, maybe the moon, but I audibly laughed at that point. It's like, it's a whole other world. Oh, and apparently women aren't allowed to dive as well. It's like, I wish I could dive.
Although that swimsuit scene is very famous for being incredibly racy for its time.
Yeah, super iconic.
When she's in her white swimsuit swimming around the lagoon. And the creature's like,
I'd tap that.
You can stay on my lawn. The rest of them, get out.
Oh, man. No, that scene's really cool. And that really gives you a sense of respect for Rico Browning. Like, the agility he had in that suit while underwater, where I bet you he could barely see. Like,
yeah, notoriously impossible to see out of those suits.
and yet created one of the most iconic underwater scenes of all time.
Well, he was hired because of the way he swam. Like, he was just... I guess he was along the trip on location scouting, and they wanted someone to swim so they could see what shooting underwater in the locations would look like. And then, like, a month later, they were like, yeah, hey, everyone who's seen that test footage likes the way you swim, so can we hire you?
That's awesome. Oh, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And also, yeah, those suits were supposed to be really difficult to see out of. In fact, Ben Chapman bashed what's-her-face's head on the rocks in that cave, and they had to stop filming for a day because he just ran her face right into the wall. He couldn't see where he was going.
I shouldn't be laughing at that, but that's really
terrible, but it's also, can you imagine being there? You'd be like, oh my god.
It's like, all right, action. Oh god. Oh man.
Terrible, but so funny.
So funny.
I mean, she was fine.
All right. So we should probably move on to our other movie so that this isn't like an hour and a half long episode.
Yeah.
So the next movie we watched was the 1981 cult classic directed by Sam Raimi, The Evil Dead. And
so when I was 9, I got to watch this sweet movie where nothing happens but a few white men get their necks snapped. And you had to watch The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I believe I was close to 10. So I don't think I was 10 yet.
So around the same age.
Yeah. And again, I was over at a friend's house for his birthday. And we had
Parents of the 90s, what up?
We had very different friends growing up. And so I watched Evil Dead, where there is blood, gore, dismemberment, a foliage rape scene. It's a... I think the best way I can describe it is it's just a fucked up movie.
It's a fucked up movie. Yeah. I had seen clips of it before, but I hadn't like watched the whole movie. It's fucked up. Yeah. It's also on Netflix if you feel the need to watch it yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's also not that long. I think it's only an hour and a half. So
yeah,
it's a cult classic. I mean, it's a objectively bad movie.
Sure.
It was filmed on a budget of $200,000, which was all of Sam Raimi's and Bruce Campbell's money. Like, they took out loans to make that movie. It ended up making like $24 million in its lifetime. So, I mean, it's a success. I mean, it's a cult classic. Yep. But it is objectively a bad movie.
Yeah. For many reasons. So let me give a little insight into The Evil Dead. Spoilers.
Oh yeah, spoilers for a movie that came out 102 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Math. So Evil Dead was a pet project by Sam Raimi.
Mm-hmm.
And when they made it under super, super low budget. I mean, to the point where the car that they use in it is Sam Raimi's car. Like, that was his car. So, like, they had no budget.
Right.
And it got a cult following. And so they ended up making 2 other movies. Evil Dead 2. So, Evil Dead, I hate this movie. I genuinely hate this movie. It's what causes me to not want to watch any horror movie. It psychologically damaged me as a child. And watching it through it again, it wasn't as bad, but it was still just like, I don't like this at all.
Yeah, I felt similarly while watching it.
Yes.
I don't have any history to traumatize me with it.
Yes. That being said, Evil Dead 2 is one of my all-time favorite movies in the horror genre. Like, it's not in top 10 like all-time movies, but like if you were to ask me what one of my favorite horror movies is, it would be Evil Dead 2, because they go full on into dark comedy, so they don't take it seriously. Whereas the first one, they take it very seriously.
Yes.
And it's rough.
Yep, it's rough.
What I love most about it, and by love I mean hate. So when you hear me say love, I mean hate. But what I love most about this movie is that they had two cameras. A normal 30 millimeter film camera and a handheld, I think it was a Super 8.
Sure.
And you can tell which camera they use.
It must have been a nightmare to cut together.
Oh, it was. Yeah. If you look at
the day of physical film format.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. You can so the version on Netflix is a lot better.
Sure.
I think they've digitally remastered it, but there was aspect ratio changes whenever they used the different cameras on the original VHS that I watched. But you can tell which camera they use because it's based off of movement, essentially. So whenever the camera's just like flying around the forest, it's the Super 8, super low quality and like blurry and just gross. And then when they're, in the house or near the house, it's the 30 millimeter film camera that was harder to move. It was much heavier. And so it was much more limited in its mobility.
Right.
Though at one point, I think they literally just pushed the camera through a window, like glass and all. Like they break the window with the camera. So that's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie's terrible. It's so terrible. And it got a remake, apparently, like in 2013 or something like that.
I feel like I heard that.
It shouldn't have.
In it?
Probably, who knows? He's in everything that's related to Evil Dead. Video games, TV shows, whatever. He's in it. But, I mean, I genuinely feel like this was an excuse. This whole movie was just an excuse for Sam Raimi to throw buckets of blood into Bruce Campbell's face.
Yeah, it seems that way. Seems like his goal was to make him ingest as much blood as possible.
Like, there's just scenes out of nowhere. Like when he's in the basement and the pipe just randomly bursts open. It's like, that was entirely unnecessary to the plot. Everything about this.
But listen, they had a surplus of blood, and they needed a few extra shots to fill in the plot.
Well, it's like, I want to see what their budget allotment was. It was like, okay, we put 60,000 for cameras,
40% blood. 10% everything else.
Oh, man. The acting. The acting is just so 80s.
Yep.
In this. Like, I don't want to say it's bad. It's just, it was 80s camp.
It's very broad.
Yes. I'm curious what your take on the makeup and costuming was. With your expert taste.
Horror movie costuming is great because it doesn't matter. If you think that they're getting people in this grade of horror, obviously there are different grades of horror movies.
Right.
I am not talking about the Jordan Peels out there or the Alfred Hitchcocks out there. I am talking about this level of horror. If you think someone is going in and planning out costumes by character for, story enhancement, you are incorrect. I'm sure most of these were do you have any clothes that you don't mind being destroyed? Please wear those to set.
I think one of my favorite parts of the makeup in this is there's a part where there's like,
Oh, the makeup was great.
oh yeah, it's
No complaints
it's
there.
horribly great. But there's a point where the first girl who got raped by the trees,
Yeah.
she first turns to the bad, like the evil dead or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And her hand is like reaching for the pencil and it's about to stab it into the Achilles heel of the other girl. When she's reaching for it, you can obviously see that the makeup glove that she's wearing, ripped around the finger, and it was just a perfectly clean index finger. And everything else is just like gory and mangled, except for the tip of her index finger is just like perfectly clean and pristine. Just like,
It hadn't gotten that far in infecting her yet.
Oh yeah,
but really, if you look at even like the highest budget movies from this era, this is like the style of makeup. The makeup wasn't even like bad makeup for its era.
No,
I mean,
definitely
fuck,
not.
look at the transition explodey head dude in Total Recall. Tell me that's better than this. Because it sure isn't.
That's true. Though the explodey head dude in Total Recall has steam coming out of his ears, so that automatically makes it better.
Wasn't there steam coming out of something in this movie at some point?
When the book catches on fire, all the zombies catch on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just start smoking. Yeah. I guess you're right. You're right. They do.
So the makeup, frankly, might be the best part of this movie.
Definitely. I will tell you, though, what the most horrifying part of this movie is. You ready?
Good.
It's not the dismemberment. It's not the gore. It's not the plant rape.
Sure.
It's the continuity. The continuity in this movie is absolutely horrifying. Like, I'm pretty sure they filmed this over a summer and just tried to remember what they were wearing. Like, there's points where one of the characters is in like a white gown, like a nightgown, and she gets dunked with blood. And then the next scene, he's carrying her out of the building, and her white gown is completely clean. It's just like, oh, okay. Oh, and did you love the superimposed moon over every night scene? I mean, it's just gorgeous. I mean, this is one of those movies where I hate every aspect of it, but it formed my youth.
I'm so sorry.
I have to give it some semblance of respect because of how it affected me. Mostly negatively, but like,
still effect.
I do think, though, as a 9-year-old watching this movie, watching it being handheld filmed and poorly acted,
sure,
my 9-year-old brain thought, I could do that better. And I think that's what got me truly into, you know, being a cinephile, is wanting to see genuinely good movies and wanting to make good movies, you know? And I wish I had like the raw digital file. Like, if someone digitized this and gave me the raw files, I would really want to try and edit it better. Because it is... I mean, this was kind of a sign of the 80s, though. But they linger on things. They just linger on things. Like, there's a part where one of the zombies gets stabbed in the back, and it's a good, like, 90 seconds of her going... It's like, okay, we needed 7 seconds of
Sorry,
that.
headphone wearers.
Oh, yeah. Apologies. But it's just like, we needed like 5 to 7 seconds of that, and then a thump of them hitting the ground. We didn't need 90 seconds of them slowly crumbling to the ground, screeching like a banshee out of hell.
Did. Oh, how much of the budget do you think went to that wild claymation bit at the end?
That was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
I feel
It
like that
went on
was
at least 4 times longer than it needed to.
yes, and then the random arms that burst out of him, like
Yeah, that was important.
was it?
Yeah, it told the story.
Okay.
It let us know there were extra arms in them the whole time.
Okay, got it. Okay, good to know. I missed that motif apparently.
Yeah, the extra arms motif.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the budget for that was like a trip to McDonald's because it was obviously done by like the director's nephew or something. No, I mean it was great, but it was way too long and came out of fucking left field.
Yeah.
And had no impact or like any essence of the plot within it whatsoever. There is, however, one scene that I absolutely adore in this movie.
Uh-huh.
Like non-sarcastically. Like there's one scene that is phenomenal. And it's right before everything starts going batshit insane and like Bruce Campbell's Ash starts going nuts and killing all the zombies. It's when he's like the noises in the house are going weird and like it's zoomed in on his face. Like there's a lot of eye line shots in this movie and it does that. And he kind of looks over to the mirror and he looks over in the mirror and he's looking back and his reflection smirks at him and he puts his hand and it's water and his hand goes through it and it splashes. I love that scene.
Made no sense with the rest of the movie.
No sense whatsoever.
But it was pretty cool.
So a little thing into Evil Dead 2, they have a callback to that scene.
Good.
So it's much more of a dark comedy and thing, but it's more psychological than the first one. And there's a point where like the deer's head is like yelling at him and like the house itself is more haunted than the book Haunting the Forest.
Sure.
And there's a point where he sees the mirror again. And like he's like, "Oh man, I remember that." And he like goes up to it and he's looking and it's a wider angle so you can see the back of him standing looking at the mirror. And Ash reaches out from the mirror and grabs him. So it's like it's a much more detailed version of it where it's like instead of him reaching in and it's a splash, his reflection reaches out of the mirror and grabs him. And it's a really well done shot. It's all practical in camera too. It was a body double and yada yada yada.
Sure.
But I mean, I just love that shot. And it's a throwback to the first one, which had the water. And I'm pretty sure that's the only redeeming thing in this whole movie. As horrible as that sounds. But I mean, I will probably not watch this for another 20 to 30 years.
Great.
Until we do another Halloween episode. You know, we'll be on episode 6003.
Wow.
You know, as we do.
We're going to really be upping our release schedule.
We are going to commit, you know.
We're going to do daily podcasts now, I guess.
Two podcasts a day.
All we're doing from now on is recording and editing.
Oh
Sorry, work.
We're going to need at least one more Patreon supporter to do that. At least one. Maybe more. But yeah, I mean, of these two movies, I definitely enjoyed watching Creature of the Black Lagoon a lot more.
Sure.
But
that movie, for all of its offenses, and like, you couldn't make that movie now.
Which one?
Without changing the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, either of them really, but
yeah.
I feel like you could get away with Evil Dead more because its offenses are meant to be offensive.
True.
Like Creature from the Black Lagoon, you'd have to re-angle it so that there was commentary about all the racism and sexism in the movie, or it would be insane to make today.
Definitely.
And you know, maybe that's a fun angle to reframe this with a little more background on, because there's like almost a whiff of the concept of the monster is man with the I watched this with my family a few weeks ago, and who we lovingly referred to as the Chad character. The one who's just like, let's go kill. Hey, It's time for killing. There's a little whiff of that story with that character in there, and maybe it would be fun to do a remake where that's an actual element of the story. I don't know that it's necessary to find out, but that's the only way you could remake this movie as this movie nowadays.
Yeah, definitely.
But Evil Dead, there's 40 of those coming out every year.
No, seriously. They're just all now found footage style
Sure.
movies.
There is an appeal to that style of horror. It's not a style I'm particularly fond of, but I totally get people wanting that. It's a shock value thing.
Right, yeah.
I prefer horror that is more story-driven, but that's just a preference. I get that a lot of people want to go in and just have like a shocking, offensive, and funny because of that time. And this will give you that.
Definitely. Ugh. All right. Well, I think that brings our spooky Halloween special to a close. Definitely want to thank our Patreon supporters,
Yes.
Jenny, Jake, Pam, and Graham. You guys make all of this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, Jake, Pam, and Graham.
And if you want 2 daily episodes a day of Casual Cinephilia, we're going to need a couple more. So just throwing
You're
that
gonna
out
need
there.
like 999,000
Luft balloons.
Like we need so many more of you to do 2 episodes a day. So don't get your hopes up. But if you want to recruit a small army so that we can do nothing with our lives but watch and talk about movies,
send them over to
we'll
patreon.com/casual cinephilia. Oh man.
Awful.
All right. So
Can you imagine how bad quality of life would be if you had to just watch movies and talk about them?
oh, I'd hate it. I'd probably hate it and hate movies by the end of the first month of it. We'd have to just quit our jobs and make
62 podcasts in the month of October.
we'd have to quit our jobs and start a new podcast of reviewing books. We'd make a book club. Reviewing 2 books a day.
We'd have to buy a communal property because we wouldn't have time to drive
No,
to
that's
and
true.
from
There
different
would
houses.
definitely would not be enough time to drive. All right. So, the next movie we are watching is going to be a breath of fresh air, I'm sure.
We'll see.
I say that because it's probably going to be cringy as all hell, but in an entertaining way. We're going to be watching Borat, the subsequent movie film.
Yep.
So, look forward to that whenever our next episode comes out. I don't know what our schedule is anymore, because this one's not on our normal schedule.
Yeah. Sometime.
Sometime between now and then.
It's gonna be a Wednesday.
You know? I feel like that's very fair of us, you know? Like, it's eventually going to come out on a Wednesday. Unless my freaking
Unless
computer...
the internet is bad.
Yeah, unless my computer craps out my editing program and takes me an entire day to recover it like last episode.
Right.
Anyways. This has been the Halloween special of Casual Cinephilia. Thank you for joining us.
Halloween!
Happy Halloween! Bye!
Bye.